This didn't feel complete without Markiplier. It didn't feel complete without Markiplier. Tell me I'm not the only person who feels this way. Please. Five Nights at Freddy's was directed by Emma Tammy and stars Josh Hutcherson in the leading role and is an adaptation of the very popular series of video games and comics. In here, Josh Hutcherson's character is a down-on-the-luck guy who serves as a security guard who finds himself fired yet again, and while struggling to keep custody of his young sister from his aunt, who may not be the best person, he takes a job at an abandoned amusement sort of restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's, but soon he discovers there's something dark and sinister afoot, which leads to a connection in his dreams. Five Nights at Freddy's has had such a build-up because of the cult following it's had online. People have gamed it, it had comic runs. It just really exploded. It was a cultural phenomenon for I think a lot of people in my generation and some that were older. Personally, for me, I really never got that into Five Nights at Freddy's. I just discovered it very recently. I've watched videos. I've never played the games or read the comics. So for me, it was just there, it was something that was like, that's cool, they're really going to adapt this. And I was more enjoying seeing everyone else get hyped compared to actually myself being hyped. While I did have excitement for it, I didn't necessarily have the highest hopes because, it's not like anything I'm really crazy about. Nevertheless, I was intrigued and I did get to see it recently. I watched it on Peacock. I didn't watch it in theater. I didn't want to spend that much money on it. And I have to say, it's pretty much a huge letdown for me. Five Nights at Freddy's is an extremely disappointing film. I wanted to really love it, and originally I was going to come on here and make a review that's very positive, but after having time to sit and marinate with it, especially the original thoughts where I really wanted to love it, it's not good. The film has tons of flaws. Its script doesn't make much sense. Motivations are lacking. People don't do anything rationally. Like, this takes horror film stupidity to the next level, and it struggles a lot. There are positives, which I'm going to talk about first. Josh Hutcherson in the lead role is phenomenal. He gives a very real performance. Everything about him was perfect. He felt like a real guy, and he takes some of the things that are more outlandish and helps to ground them a little more in reality. He has a very sympathetic way of bringing this character to life that I really resonated with. He's a typical guy with a sister that he loves, and there's scenes where he's quiet and everyone else is talking, and you can see more in his face, and he gets a chance to do a lot of silent acting. The film also has some really good cinematography throughout, and I think the direction for the most part is pretty good. It's serviceable, but a little above that. It does a well enough job, I think, with most of the scenes, and it does a good job at trying to flesh out everyone. Perhaps spends too much time trying to do that. This movie takes way too long to set things up, and honestly, by the time the action starts, it wasn't the way I was hoping it to be. And the thing is, a lot of this review is not so much that also the movie was disappointing, which it is, and it is a lesser film, but also I had expectations, and I think that's one of the worst things you can do. I admittedly went in with expectations, and if you go in expecting something from a movie, you can be disappointed very easily because it's not the movie I wanted to see. But I really wasn't happy with the lack of claustrophobia, if that makes sense. You don't feel enclosed in this place. You feel very much like there's room to run around, and they spend a lot of time outside of it. There's hardly much time spent in it, and the animatronics weren't creatively used, I think, as well they could have been. These could have been really horrifying and terrifying and scary, but they don't feel like it, and it is hindered by the PG-13 rating, I believe, which I understand why they do it, because you want the younger crowd in there, but also it just wasn't effectively done, especially the way they put the relationship with his sister, and there are just too many twists in this movie to go with that. This movie has twists left and right, and a lot of them just feel like they're for shock value. Particularly in the end, this movie struggled heavily with trying to wrap these things up. This lady who plays a police officer in here was also probably the worst part of the movie for me. I'm baffled at a lot of the choices that they made with her on paper. It's not so much the actress's fault as much as what they gave her. There's really nothing to work with. A lot of the movie feels cheap, and tons of things make no sense, including an animatronic getting in a taxi cab. And the Uber driver seems not to care. I don't understand why. There's just a lot of underwhelming parts to this movie. That's the best way I can describe it. Underwhelming, subpar, and nothing that really got me into it at any point. You just kind of watched events take place, and it's very predictable throughout. I found it to be very much not the movie that I was hoping it was going to really live up to be. Another huge detraction from this movie, it gets way too outlandish. Some things in here are really crazy, and I just feel like go too far. The ending just happens, I guess is the best way you could put it. There's nothing really there that felt like I was fulfilled. This is just me, though, and in my opinion, it's not the right opinion. I'm aware a lot of people love this movie, but for me, it didn't really resonate. The movie does have some good quality to it in parts. Like I said, there are things to this movie that really work. But for the most part, for me, nothing really was working. There's just a lot of aspects to it that don't work, and I'm a very picky person when it comes to horror, so I'm going to be a little more critical of that. So with that said, let's give this a rating. I'm going to give Five Nights at Freddy's a 3 out of 10. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you all next time.